Welcome everybody to the Common Law Court of Wales radio broadcast by Elizabeth Watson. We've got no time to waste, so I'll hand you straight over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Darren. Yeah, hi everybody. I just want to let everybody know the letter I wrote to David Green, the director at the Serious Fraud Office, on the 10th of June 2015. Within a matter of hours of the letter having been sent, I noticed it had been expunged from my records on my computer. I could not find it anywhere. It wasn't in any of the filters. It wasn't in the spam filter. It didn't come up on the search engines. And it appears that it was literally hacked or stalked or tagged and removed. There was only one autoresponder from Land Registry, and it said tagged. So they've obviously got this information tagged. I think it's important to get it out into the public domain. This is the state of the way things are being run in Britain. We have apparently the Serious Fraud Office are shirking their duty, shirking their responsibility, setting a very poor example in my humble opinion. I said to the SFO last week that I thought they were complacent, that they should basically pull their finger out. David Green gave a compelling sounding interview with Joshua Rosenberg on Radio 4 last year with Ian Fraser, and he basically said, oh, we go by evidence, because Ian Fraser asked an excellent question, right on the money. He said, how is it that we have hundreds of billions of pounds being wiped off bank balance sheets and not a single prosecution of a bankster in sight? I say bankster, gangster, banker, to use the polite word. How come there's not a single prosecution in sight? And Green answered, oh, we go by evidence. I sent him evidence straight after that interview. Not a murmur, not a squeak, not even the courtesy of a reply. That is how they deal with it. Conspiracy of silence from those in public office abusing their positions. And if they're now resorting to obliterating records, luckily I managed to retrieve the record, which is why I'm now going to read it out, because I took precautions knowing some of the tricks they will pull. It's concerning a case called Vavasseur. It was an infrastructure of companies set up around the world, offshore companies which were used by a major bank, HBOS as they were known, now under Lloyds Banking Group or Bank of Scotland PLC, who back in, 14 years ago, were running a massive heist, and I know this has been patterned by many of the major banks, to essentially misappropriate money from innocent people using serious organised crime with the complicity and assistance by various people in public office, including the regulators. We have a capture regulation situation. The FSA was shut down because of this case, and they became the FCA. The same monkeys, same circus, different acronym. Ditto, the whole shooting match that were involved, which is the SFO, the bank, and all the regulators. The financial ombudsman, of course, he's been well and truly duct taped. And in fact, Natalie Feeney, the chief financial ombudsman, resigned in December 2013. I believe it was on the back of this case. It was when she got wind of the fact that the BBC One Inside Out South were doing a broadcast taking the lid off this case, which went to air on the 3rd of March 2014, but failed to explain that none of us actually got the money. They made out that never borrow what you can't afford to repay, fair enough, provided you did get the money in the first place. In fact, that was the scam. We lost control of the money. The bank took control, pooled it like a lake, pulled it in one big pool, and pretended it was in our names, and it was in breach of the Financial Services Markets Act 2000, etc. Not a single public official has been willing to face the music on this case. My local MP in Bournemouth, Conor Burns, utterly disinterested in anything to do with it. They all turn around and use the party line. We're not interested in individual cases. We can't help with individual cases. Bollocks to that. We're all individual cases making up the collective. They're doing these frauds on the collective. They have an insatiable appetite to misappropriate assets. Anyway, this is what I wrote to Mr. Green. I will read it out, and I'll try and explain any bits that might need explaining. Dear Mr. Green, urgent notice, served in the public interest and in the interest of the cause of justice. I have written to you on at least 2 previous occasions, but regrettably I've never had the courtesy of a reply. Please could you kindly look into this? Unfortunately, neither of your predecessors, Robert Wardle nor Richard Alderman, have done anything to serve or support the cause of justice, despite strenuous efforts from my side seeking this, and to alert them to hard facts which need the SFO's urgent intervention and appropriate action with a private criminal prosecution, given that the entire criminal justice system is infiltrated with criminal gangs. See the Independent newspaper article from January 2014, referring to leaked reports from New Scotland Yard. I believe the article was written by Tom Harper, who now works at the Sunday Times, I believe. And there are serious outstanding matters that need your attention. One such matter is the Vavasseur fraud and the appalling 14-year repercussions with compound additional injustices involving the fraudulent winding up of Dob White by the FSA and the false and illegal foreclosures from rogue solicitors like Timothy Pyle of Eversheds, where no debt exists or has ever existed at the bank itself, being cited as the purported lender, yet with nil evidence of any loans. How has the SFO been able to dismissively turn a blind eye to the shortfall of $200 million, still unaccounted for, belonging to the victims all these years later? This is a huge sum of money and has cost many of us our quality of life, and many have unjustly lost their homes because of this brazen but well concealed theft of everyone's money through abuse in public office. None of the above is helped by the fact that the SFO failed to alert the rightful fund owners that their ostensibly invested money, invested inverted commas, on an illegal pooled basis unbeknown to any of us, in fact was frozen undercover by the Securities Exchange Commission, American authorities, on the 19th of November 2001. Yet the SFO, the FSA and the banks failed to alert us. By the way, I have the proof of this, and it was removed from the internet when it came out through One Voice Action Group, which I set up in February 2008 because we were cut off from information. I've actually got the SEC court documents. They've all been expunged from the public record, but I have them all. They've all been downloaded and put in a safe place. The fact that all of you allowed the fraud to just continue to run and indeed to expand demonstrates there are many serious issues here to be examined. Do you concur? This decision on the SFO's part has inexcusably caused all of us to suffer appalling damages and losses. And as the SFO will know, the forensic audit trails which prove that the monies were A, unlawfully pooled in offshore accounts, which were controlled by one Isle of Man umbrella company called Errol Management Limited, ERYL. B, were ultimately controlled by the HBOS head auditor at the time, Fraser Mackay. By the way, he is featured in the BBC One Inside Out South broadcast with Nick Wallace on the 3rd of March 2014. Wallace is spelled W-A-L-L-I-S. If you Google Nick Wallace HBOS, it will bring up the link. Who acted in a role of a trustee, yet Mackay did not disclose this to any of us. C, which relied upon fake securities or LOUs, in brackets, letters of undertaking, issued by Dob White, who, the record indicates, appear to have worked previously with Fraser Mackay and HBOS in the late 1990s when Dob White were convicted of unlicensed deposit taking and money laundering. So why did the bank escape justice the first time as well? Dob White, by the way, were Midland accountants, and they were prosecuted for conspiracy to defraud and sentenced to 7.5 years in jail in February 2008 by the SFO. Wonderful scapegoats they were. D, misappropriated money in a carefully planned and controlled conspiracy to defraud by the shadow entity of In Parallel Solutions. That's 3 words, In Parallel Solutions, a trading name for the Bank of Scotland's inside track to run the fraud through, in collusion with Dob White and Scott's Private Client Services and St James's Place, which was Crosby's own company, acquired by J. Rothschild Assurance in October 2000. Acquired by him from J. Rothschild Assurance in October 2000, and renamed after himself, St James's Place, James Crosby. Also, Anderson Charnley, and various others, including individuals like Darren Macduff, Timothy Holmes of Salisbury House, etc. B. Illegally pooled monies procured by deception, steered by Fraser Mackay and his accomplices into various offshore collecting accounts, itself an actionable offence under the Financial Services Markets Act 2000, Client Asset Security Rule 7.5, which, by the way, state that no monies can be transferred offshore unless they're in an account in your name, which had the effect of stripping all the rightful fund owners of lawful title to their quote-unquote money, as it became the property of the undisclosed trustee, Fraser Mackay, in a breach of trust and a breach of fiduciary duty, all conveniently pushed onto Shin-Ganga and Darren White, the two Midlands accountant scapegoats, who were convicted in February 2008, who performed useful services to HBOS. Have you examined Fraser Mackay's transcripted evidence given at the Birmingham Crown Court on the 26th and 28th to the 28th of November 2007? He therein admits that Shin-Ganga's role was, quote, to introduce high net worth clients for him to do the bank business, and described how he became, quote, even closer to Shin-Ganga after he left his employ at the bank in late 2001. Did the source realise that Fraser Mackay only left the bank via sudden resignation on the 20th of November 2001, being the same day he discovered that there was the undercover freezing order in the US over all the client monies he had illegally pooled and collected in the offshore accounts? This was once he discovered this, and that the money had been frozen, which he was directly responsible for procuring and controlling without fiscal authority to do so. F. Some $233 million procured within 18 months by Fraser Mackay and his cohorts using illegal means, half of which were drawn against people's homes, with no consideration given in return for the charges taken on those homes by deception using void deeds. He did this from the Manchester office, where he was a director, and the In Parallel Solutions trading name was running literally in parallel to the real bank at HBOS, like an inside track, misappropriating everyone's monies through offshore accounts and relying on everything being transacted outside the UK jurisdiction. This is because of the capture regulations situation, because money, the FSA are supposed to stop money laundering.
Indeed.
And here they were captured and working for them. No one, in fact, was ever truly a borrower, as they never had any access to their money, which only Mackay controlled. This is because the letters of undertaking were worthless pieces of script, but knowingly relied upon HBOS with their apparent full intention to deceive. The scheme was missold by Mackay and his agents as being risk-free, on the basis he said, now wait for it, he said it was underpinned by the Dodd-White Professional Indemnity Insurance. Please note, the complicit FSA also knew that by winding up Dodd-White on the 3rd of December 2003, they would flush away any validity on the letters of undertaking or worthless securities, which Mackay et al. Had pointedly got all their victims to regard as the fail-safe if anything were to go wrong. Do you begin to get a flavour of how these people operate in their criminal gang?
Absolutely.
Mackay was also the business manager for Scott's private client services, John Dryborough, who has since been struck off by ICAS, that's the Independent Association of Scottish Accountants, for fraud and money laundering via the Weavering Capital hedge fund, who were also shut down with a 600 million deficit, and Gerard's accounts, which they deceitfully set up to steal client money through. HBOS, of course, had granted 2 client accounts to John Dryborough to conduct these thefts, using the Scots setup as the money laundering vehicle. They pretended to offer children's investment bonds, which in fact did not even exist, it would appear from the records, or the lack of records. Remember that, a lack of a forensic audit trail is itself forensic evidence.
Yes.
G. Apparently, it would appear that all client monies were thieved by Fraser Mackay and his entourage and cohorts using their illegal trading entity. That was, in Parallel Solutions, a shadow bank. Neither the SFO or anyone else has yet understood this, it appears. No one has examined Fraser Mackay's personal bank accounts and holdings and his movements during the past 14 years. Or have they? By the way, in the BBC documentary, it shows him living high on the hog, going on expensive trekking holidays around the world. And then when they went to his high-security flat in Chester, he was nowhere to be seen. He wouldn't come and talk to the cameras. He was happy to talk on the phone about his trekking and his great lifestyle, but he didn't want to talk to them. So, can you believe this man still walks free? Yes, he's been living on the proceeds of crime, having taken the early retirement, living high on the hog with expensive trekking holidays around the world, as discovered by BBC One Inside Out South last year when they broadcast the documentary on the 3rd of March 2014. H. Many millions of pounds of further monies were procured by illegal means by Fraser Mackay and his cohorts, who set up false, quote, bank accounts, unquote, abusing our data and many others too. Literally setting up a purported bank account off the bank's ledger, however, using false paperwork and forged bank statements, all done without any signed mandate of authority. How many people have been told that they're in arrears and, they get a notice of default and they get told, you owe us, and then what you need to say is, well, who opened this account? Where's the mandate? Please show me the checkbook. Please show me the debit card. Anyway, I'll continue. Through this, we were deceived into paying interest on what was later exposed as being a non-existent loan for nearly £100,686. And my sister, Rosie Copeland, lost at least £42,000 cash in loan interest payments in an identical way between 2001 and February 2007, when we at last could access subject access request notice data, which included an internal memo from the bank confirming that the banksters had done no due diligence into the scheme which they so highly recommended and missold to us. We were deceived. So what happened to all those millions of pounds, too, procured by deception using false instruments and fake bank accounts, I wonder? Where did the money go, given that the private banking unit, where Fraser Mackay et al. Worked, within the Bank of Scotland plc, confirmed to me, on tape in late 2013, that they have, quote, no record of any of the accounts, unquote, and, quote, no mortgage or loan against our properties, and no record of any collections against our properties, and, the big one, no solicitors instructed. Here is my proof that this is shadow banking at its worst, and this is the massive public deception. I also just want to add that when you think how many millions or billions are they, siphoning away into offshore entities in this, using this method of fake banking, fake bank accounts through shadow entities. All of it's done in the shadow. We've got a situation with shadow banks. It starts with the shadow bank or the shadow lender. Then they use shadow solicitors who are mirroring the real law firm, but they have like a separate offshore thing, sometimes even having the cheek to use the UK address, but not filing any accounts in the UK. If you probe these vermin, you quickly find out what they're up to, and many of them have many faces, many facades. Some of them, they operate under 20 companies, like it would appear Mortgage Express do. They have many, many faces, and they revolve these defunct companies, and they keep moving a bit like an itinerant to obviously avoid being tracked. I mean, it's an absolute abomination. It's total organised crime. And I really urge anybody who's got a bank account to check it, check it on the bank's ledger. Under the Bankers Book Evidence Act 1879, we are entitled to inspect any bank's ledger, and every mortgage and every loan and every bank account has to be recorded on the ledger. And if it's not on the ledger, it doesn't exist. And of course, you will find, I would go so far as to say that 99% of all these so-called loans are in fact liar loans, and they don't exist, and they're all fabricated. They're a work of pure fiction. So, to continue, oh, by the way, the current director of the private banking unit at Bank of Scotland and Lloyds Banking Group, is Ian Kirkpatrick, and he's hiding behind the corporate identity and staying stum. It is absolutely sickening, because this is total fraud by non-disclosure, which is an offence under the Fraud Act 2006, Section 3, fraud by non-disclosure.
Again, Elizabeth, we seem to have a situation here where these fraudsters are hiding behind the system in order to perpetrate the frauds themselves. I mean, the whole system is geared up to foster fraud, isn't it? I mean, it's sickening, as you say.
That's the scary part, because, you know, these are the gatekeepers, these are the people that are posing as officials. You know, this is absolute malfeasance, misfeasance in public office.
Absolutely.
Absolutely sickening. And as David Icke says, these are invisible walls. You know, we are free. Let's, you know, bust down these invisible barriers and challenge these rogues in high places.
Indeed.
Anyway, I'll continue.
Please do.
Paragraph I. It all undoubtedly resulted in Fraser Mackay having such a guilty conscience that it begs the question, did Fraser Mackay in fact turn to Queen's evidence on the 12th of September 2002 when he secretly gave himself up by calling in to the Serious Fraud Office on that date after the FBI in America had swooped to close down Overseas Development Bank and Trust in Dominica, which had been renamed IBT, or Investors Bank and Trust, to try to eschew being tracked, which he had been hitherto relying upon, this is Mackay, as a means of facilitating withdrawals from his expanding Ponzi scheme, which it had developed into by this stage after the undercover freeze of 19th November. In other words, Mackay had colluded with Shin Ganga, the convicted accountant, who got scapegoated. He colluded to open up a special bank in Dominica, which wasn't really a bank. It only took incoming wire transfers. It wouldn't accept checks. And the owner was Malcolm West, and he went to jail as well. If anybody wants to Google it, look it up, you'll see that this is all there in the public domain. And this is the cesspit of corruption that these people use and have covered up for 14 years. So, what was the deal that Fraser Mackay did with the Serious Fraud Office, please? We are entitled to know this under the Freedom of Information Act, as it is of huge public interest and public importance, especially since the victims trusted the SFO to protect their interests. And by the way, I just want to add, I went to prison, in Holloway Prison, on so-called trumped-up civil charges, allegations that I was in contempt of court. I wasn't even a party to the case. It was relating to a family case from Vicky Hague, whose daughter was stolen by the state, Doncaster Council, Doncaster Metropolitan Borough Council, the same place where Jimmy Savile's paedophile ring was having a field day, and it was the very start of dismantling and busting the Savile paedophile ring. I actually went to jail. I was actually sentenced illegally from a secret court, a family court, Nicholas Wall, the president of the family court, without a trial, without a defence, without any opportunity to defend myself. I wasn't even a party to the case. Nobody had even applied to make me a party. They had no jurisdiction to do anything with me whatsoever. It was totally illegal. They absolutely violated every single human right that's ever been written. And it all happened very, very suddenly, cloak and dagger. They did it to shut me down, to gag me, to duct tape me, and to intimidate and terrorise. They marched me into the dungeons of the High Court on the 20th of August 2011, and then threw me into Holloway Prison. In the very close, I had turned up at court in having been summoned and subpoenaed with personal service from the tip staff guy working at the High Court. It was a horrendous nightmare, and I spent 10 days at prison. I literally had to buy back my liberty. It cost over £6,000. It was a total stitch-up. I was misadvised to purge the alleged contempt and the lies that they told about me having ostensibly breached an injunction was absolute rubbish. They never served an injunction on me. And then when they did give me some papers, it was after the event. And the injunctions weren't valid because they were concealing the most shocking truth, which was the police reports of an interview with a 5-year-old girl, whose name I won't mention, but suffice it to say, I saw that police report with my own eyes. It was a restricted document. The judge did not even read the document, let alone anyone in the press. And that child was clearly being abused. That is the family court's view. That is the state of British injustice and the secret courts. This is how dangerous they can be. I know we have a new President Mumby who seems to be honourable and upright and is condemning these secret courts, but they are still going on. In fact, I would go so far as to say the secret courts are the shadow courts, the ones that are privately hired by the likes of rogues and criminals and banksters who are trying to peddle false claims through shadow solicitors, etc. I hope you start to get the picture. All of the frauds are conducted in the shadow. But I want to just put that in about Vicky Haigh. And guess who had turned up at the family court within days of me saying to the Serious Fraud Office, hang on a minute, you guys have committed serious fraud. You guys didn't disclose that you knew client monies had been frozen undercover by the American authorities, and you didn't tell us. You let the fraud carry on running, expanding, opening up new accounts, which led to us all being stripped of our money, and all the records being hidden under seal with you working with the FSA, and you've not done a thing about it. How horrendous is that? But this is what the SFO do. They think if it's bad for the economy, they must cover it up. They think that we need to keep the banksters in power. What I find so shocking is that if you look at what's happened with Iceland, in fact, I just got it yesterday, it's sent to me by a barrister. The Icelandic banks, the government in Iceland sent the criminals posing as bankers to jail. And now the economy is recovering beautifully. You know, why on earth aren't we doing that in Britain? That is what we urgently need to do. Send these banksters to jail, and the people that are aiding and abetting and illegally protecting them. Fraser Mackay was working 34 years at the Bank of Scotland. He worked under the wing, clearly, of James Crosby, the disgraced ex-CEO of HBOS, who was stripped of his knighthood. How does stripping him of his knighthood help any of us? You know, we have the nuclear trail in our midst. We are, you know, this has wrecked people's lives. This has turned our lives upside down. We are living with the shrapnel and the nuclear fallout of these criminals abusing their positions. I mean, it is absolutely sickening.
It is. It's disgusting. I mean, this fiat-based debt slave system is well past its sell-by date, Elizabeth, as you quite rightly document. And in order to keep this Ponzi scheme going between the franchise, which is the Western central banking system, in order to balance the books, they've got to go out and actually rob and asset strip nations, people, it doesn't matter, anywhere that they can get their fix of an extra few bob in order to balance this corrupt system. And they're just running amok now, aren't they?
Well, because they're hiding in the shadow. It's the same old thing. It's shadow, shadow, shadow all the way through, and hiding. You know, evil will always hide itself. It won't come out into the open. No. You challenge it and it's a coward. It will either flee or it will fight. They've now lost their armoury to carry on the fight. You know, they're being laid bare. They don't like it. I heard yesterday that Mervyn King was condemned for the culture of fraud that's now Britain's becoming infamous for. It's a disgrace. I'm ashamed to be British, quite frankly. Well, I try not to live in England anymore. I try to keep away as much as I can. I think it's tragic what's happened to our beautiful country. We have got rogues and criminals have hijacked our country through profligacy, greed, deception, duplicitous setups, you know, abuse in high places. And, you know, if you look at a lot of these frauds, they stem back to the Land Registry, HMLR. All of these seem to trace back to the Her Majesty's departments. How come? How come? We need a complete public-led inquiry, not officials-led, public-led inquiry into what are these HM departments up to. You know, by their fruits we know them. They all seem to be tarred with the same brush.
100%. We try to show the people this in the broadcast, so we do it. Anne Richardson, she was acid stripped with the same method. We got the work that Gordon Bowden does, uncovering this insidious system. This is what it is, and it's stripping the people of everything. There's not a lot left.
Well, at least we're now getting the anatomy of the beast. we're dismantling the beast and
Yeah.
analysing it. And I'd love to talk to Gordon Bowden. I thought that was an excellent article. Shall I just finish the rest of it, because it gives you the full picture?
Indeed, please do. We are sidetracking.
I mean, I'm sharing this because I want it to help people. I want them to have their eyes opened. I want them to realise what's really going on. You know, it's very easy to feel in the comfort zone and try to shut these things out. You know, we all know we've all got challenges. You know, life can be quite challenging, especially to stay positive and to have a happy outlook and to live your life in peace is becoming increasingly difficult with so much outside interference and abuse. So I really pray that this will help the many innocent people, the good men and women of England, and to, you know, retain their homes. Everybody needs a home, and to retain their families and cut loose from the shackles of these invaders. Anyway, paragraph J. There was no consideration for the charges put against our property using void deeds. How could the Serious Fraud Office miss the fact that despite never having received a penny, nor access to a penny by way of a loan or anything else, we have ended up battling rogue solicitor Timothy Pyle of Evershed's Cardiff office since 2008 over what revealed itself to be a completely fraudulent possession claim against our family home. Tim Pyle has done the identical thing to my sister, and it is currently in impasse in the High Court, where last month Justice Knowles was even forced to admit, quote, the Bank of Scotland do appear to have committed fraud via their employee, and it appears that Rosemary Copeland may in fact owe nothing, paraphrase. Far from owing nothing, my sister had her previous entire cottage stolen outright in 2002, valued at £172,000. This was achieved by the fraudsters switching 2 false sets of loan account paperwork around and then setting up a US dollar bank account in the Watson's name, that's myself and my husband, again without any signed mandate of authority, using our data, only to then misappropriate $546,000 US from unknown, unrecognisable origin into an unknown bank account in Mexico called Banamex Bank. All done without our knowledge, since no bank statements were ever provided, and I only accessed a printout of this horror story before giving evidence at the Birmingham trial in October 2007. And by the way, when I gave my evidence, I didn't have the full picture then. And my goodness, if I had, I would have given my evidence completely differently. I've tried to get the case reopened. I've written to Justice Langstaff, who sat on that rigged trial. And as soon as I did that, they started targeting me and made my life a living hell. I won't go into the details. Suffice it to say, all the state departments rounded on me. Shocking chapter. But that's another reason I try not to have to live in the UK unless I have to. We, meanwhile, are encumbered with 3 false charges against our home due to an additional fraud by Santander, formerly trading as Alliance and Leicester, in collusion with Matthew and Matthew solicitors in Bournemouth, Seabourne Road, and Timothy Pyle of Evershed's Cardiff, and, in parallel, Solutions, trading name of HBOS, who took a first charge on our home, again, without our knowledge or awareness, using a forged deed. They then pretended we had been given the loan when we had completion on the purchase of our home, which we had purchased outright for cash, and that was in December 1993. But they did this in December 1997. How did I find it out? I found it out by asking for the application form for the loan, and I did that, unfortunately, 16 years too late, but at least I did that, and I got that application form in late 2013, and we've stopped paying them since, but it's now in impasse, and they've gone silent, and they're sending us fob-off letters and all the rest of it. The question is, how do you unlock the iron fist of these dead hands they deal you, these more gages, more dead gage death grips? It is a brazen fraud which traces back to unrecognised intermediary from St James's Place, who was ex-Rothschild, who used false paperwork and put post-it notes all over the invalid, falsified application, which wasn't even signed by my husband or myself. It is all a nightmare. it is still in impasse because of the lack of help in the UK and the endemic corruption. And by the way, we paid something like £92,000 over 16 years for the Santander Devil first charge loan, and we never had a penny. They said they'd sent the cheques to Matthew and Matthew solicitors, and when I tried to pursue Matthew and Matthew, I'll read on the letter, you hear what comes next. They basically kept cutting me off on the phone, and they too are being protected by the SRA and others, it would appear. The Dorset police were got at years ago. They've managed to block all investigation into the foregoing since 2006, such as the corruption and bribery involved in this huge, monumental cover-up. Last year, as you know, I've sent you hard evidence of very serious fraud which denotes capture regulation of the FSA interfacing with Bank of Scotland's fake trading entity that they set up in April 2000, being In Parallel Solutions, run as a shadow bank, ultra-various, but using the big name of HBOS, as they were known at the time. Were you aware that this is what the entire Vavasor fraud was conducted from, i.e. the shadow trading entity working like an inside track within HBOS Bank? The focus and truth were wrongly and unjustly deflected onto Shin Ganga and Alan White, the two Midlands accountants from Dobb, White & Co., who were just two of several key agents of the banksters running the In Parallel Solutions trading entity. That was a money laundering vehicle set up, it appears, by James Crosby, the disgraced ex-CEO of the bank, alongside head auditor Fraser Mackay, of 34 years standing, who worked under Crosby's wing. I have the names of many of the criminal cohorts within their gang, in brackets. Operation Tiberius is of relevance here, maybe? By the way, Operation Tiberius was mentioned in the Tom Harper leaked reports from New Scotland Yard.
Okay.
They said Freemasons have infiltrated the criminal system, but they should extend it to include the civil system, because the Freemasons are basically judges, police, I mean the whole shooting match, MPs, the whole damn lot, which includes the employees within the bank in this trading entity In Parallel were George White, deceased, Stephen Baker, Derek Wells, Angela Brogan, and other bank employees engaging in serious fraud and conspiracy to steal, using false accounting, forgery, etc., and committing compound fraud in violation of all three sections of the Fraud Act 2006. Fraud by misrepresentation, Section 2, fraud by non-disclosure, Section 3, and fraud by abuse of position, Section 4. All of this demonstrates that Ganga and White were useful scapegoats to allow illegal protectionism of very serious organised crime to occur against 400 innocent victims at the hands of rogue operators within HBOS, being protected by the state. We firmly believe, with good reason, that both John Pownall, the Weymouth Land Registrar, and Matthew and Matthew solicitors in Bournemouth are heavily complicit in aiding and abetting the false charges against our title deeds at HMLR, Her Majesty's Land Registry. I hold paperwork containing hard evidence to prove this. I've had to report a formal complaint to HMLR at their headquarters. Matthew and Matthew, however, have managed to escape any investigation so far, despite being reported to the SRA by me 2 years ago. I was predictably fobbed off. I only discovered recently they only became a firm of solicitors around 2010. And back in 1997, when they put the false first charge on our home, they were merely a general trading company, but they pretended to be solicitors, and they tricked us. There is shocking fraud in the paperwork which they've refused to deal with. We didn't even know for 9 years they put this charge on our home.
Incredible.
And by the way, the latest scam the county councils are doing is putting charges, trying to threaten people and putting charges on their home. By the way, don't be worried about that. They can't put a charge on your home without your consent, because no charge can go on a property without a deed. It needs a deed, and a deed means that indeed you give them permission and you sign the deed. And if you don't sign the deed and execute it in front, then they can't put a charge. But this is the calibre of people they are employing. They're as thick as two short planks and dead stupid. And tell them where to go. And the only reason they can filch council tax off all of us is because they are in collusion with the land registry. Because when the land registry registers a property, they effectively snatch the freehold title, gift it to the Crown, without you understanding what they've done, and they make you a tenant on your own freehold. How outrageous is that? Damn disgrace. You know, if they can actually register your property, then they should be able to unregister the properties as well. And personally, I've asked them to unregister my property. I think everybody should be doing that, because by the registration process, they then think, this is Crown property. Now, you know, you've only got the alloidial title, which is complete rubbish. And they basically turn around and say to you that you've got to carry on, you've got to pay council tax now because you're a tenant. You know, but tenants also have a lot of rights. You know, so whichever way you look at it, they're screwed. You know, they're trying to steal the equity from our properties. We are born in equity. What they do is they give you a national insurance number when you're born, and they try to make it pretend it's mandatory to register a baby, but it's actually not mandatory, and it's not enforceable under statutes which come from the EU, because they've never been ratified through Parliament. And the Queen signed the treaties with the EU without a proper democratic vote, after promising to serve us under common law in 1953 when she took her coronation oath. You know, she's basically betrayed us. She may have well been put under pressure, but, you know, this is the state of play, and it doesn't make it right. And why should we condone it? You know, they misuse force, they misuse the greatest threats to mankind are to make them homeless and rob them of all their money so they can't survive, and to incarcerate them. Those are the two greatest threats, and that's the misuse of force. They're using those threats over us to bully people into submission, and they talk about terrorism. What rubbish is that?
Day in, day out, we're witnessing it, Elizabeth. It's come to a head, I believe. It's insidious. We done a broadcast with Kevin Bedwell the other day, and whilst they were repossessing his home illegally, they had the social services with him, you know, to use as a weapon, and he was basically threatened to give up his home or they will take his grandchildren. I mean,
well, it's gangsters, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
But remember that this is a pyramidal structure, and like any business, it's always set up like a pyramid. But we are the base of the pyramid, so we are the power, we are the majority, we are the numbers.
That's
right.
You
know, there's that wonderful poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley. It says, "Arise like lions from the slumber, in invanquishable number. Break the chains of earth like dew. Ye are many, they are few." And doesn't that just sum it up? You know, we are the lions, you know.
It's a beautiful poem, that. Thank you for sharing that one, Elizabeth. And,
I think it's on the website of the British Constitution Group, and I love it too. I want to look at the whole poem. But I pretty much gave that message to Judge Meston in Bournemouth Court late last year when I looked up at the crest. I said to him, "Look at that crest." I said, "You've got the crown in the middle, you know, and you've got the unicorn in chains on the right, which is the legal fiction, and you've got the lion on the left." I said, "I am the lion." I am the lioness. And he had to laugh. And I actually said to the judge, "Look me in the eye. Look me in the eye." And it was like, he started laughing because he's not used to having a mere woman ask him to do such things. This letter about Matthew and Matthew. David Webb, the new owner of Matthew and Matthew, since a few years ago, is extremely rude and arrogant. He keeps slamming the phone down on me whenever I've tried to request the completion statements, etc. Alliance and Leicester turned around and said they'd sent 2 cheques to Matthew and Matthew. So I'm thinking, hey, we never got the damn money. Why on earth were we paying interest for 16 years? I was severely disabled back in 1997. I used to suffer with epilepsy from a skiing accident. I had some head injuries, which I'm now recovered fully. But back then I suffered grand mal seizures for 20 years, and they took full advantage of my disabled status. Because I would lose consciousness, you know, from the temporal lobe on the brain. It was a most terrible chapter, protracted chapter. But anyway, they took advantage of my disabled status, and my husband was dyslexic, and between us, he thought I'd have the money. I thought he'd have the money. He carried on paying interest on this non-existent loan from Alliance and Leicester, which had the first charge on the property, and that's how they got like 90-something thousand pounds off us. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I'll continue.
Please do.
David Webb, yeah. if anyone's got any information on David Webb, please come forward. Please send me a message through Messenger or Skype, because I'm basically wanting information on him. He appears to be a dangerous Freemason with a highly vexatious demeanour. He's continuing to operate in Seabourn Road, Bournemouth. I know of several others who have also suffered apparent fraud at the hands of this man and this company, who are evidently rogue traders and thieves who are acting as part of a criminal gang here and described in reasonable detail. Similarly, John Pownall from the Land Registry became cold as ice when I told him what I had discovered on phoning the Bank of Scotland directly on the 20th September 2013 regarding there being no debt, etc. And instead of being happy and actually saying, OK, I'll put in a DS1 form to have this false charge removed, or these 3 false charges removed, he refused to remove them and said, this is despite being given open-shut evidence of fraud. He insisted in a fallacious argument that they were voidable, but he refused to make the distinction of them being void, despite obvious forgery. And he coerced us to go through the courts. We were also stitched up there, and I kept telling him I don't want to go through the courts. There's nothing in law to say I have to get my resolution through the courts. But he was just totally in cahoots, and I've now reported him. I think he's a fraudster. I've actually got several tapes. I've got him on tape, and you will see my point. I hope we can make a film out of this and expose these rogues in high office. We've had a complete nightmare due to the serious bribery and corruption issues in Bournemouth County Court and the High Court and even the Court of Appeal. Admittedly, there appears to be rogue judges in all these courts. They've clearly sat in fraud, evidently part of the criminal gang referred to here. But we had some honest and clean-handed judges as well along the way who ruled in our favour 3 times in a row, but apparent conman Tim Pyle and his sidekick, Paul Mitchell, dishonest barrister from Hailsham Chambers, kept appealing again and again, ignoring and breaking all proper court procedures, and eventually it's evident that they resorted to bribery and corruption and literally appear to have bought off at least 12 highly questionable judges who have sat in fraud and condoned highly irregular proceedings and maladministration issues. And I will list them. Deputy District Judge David Oliver, a practising solicitor at the time, working for Blake Blackthorne as a consultant, who were acting for me on another case but did not disclose this to me, and who acted unlawfully by dismissing my strikeout application in January 2010 without giving any reason in law, and then I was repeatedly refused permission to appeal by District Judge Hurley. 2. District Judge John Hurley in Bournemouth County Court, who engaged in illegal case-fixing in collusion with Tim Pyle and deliberately crushed justice on all my other cases there, who ignored court procedure and violated all my rights to an oral hearing, and who tampered with evidence until I finally apprehended him, which resulted in him being sacked or laid off from the court in April 2014, no longer sitting as a judge, thank God. He's now gone back to being a backstreet solicitor in Charminster, ladies and gentlemen. 3. District Judge Martin Dancy in Bournemouth Court, also a highly dishonest individual who happens to be in charge of the Bournemouth Family Court, by the way. And acting with extreme prejudice and bias, he also colluded with public direct access barrister, I won't mention the name, who had, or perhaps I should mention the name, a person called Mr. Beaumont, Mark Beaumont, who appeared to commit VAT fraud and then ran off with £5,000 of my money without doing the work, and I was illegally hit with £88,000 of, quote, costs without a trial because of manipulation of the court procedure and process, which later had to be withdrawn by Mark Beaumont himself. So he said, if you take the YouTube video down, I'll get the costs removed. How come the barrister, advocate, responsible for the misdeeds and protected by the Bar Mutual Board, ends up getting the so-called judge to remove £88,000 costs, totally disproportionate against the £5,000 claim? Talk about violating the overriding objectives of the court. You know, doesn't this beg the question of what the hell's going on? Master Eyre, this is the next one, Master Eyre conflicted to sit in the Queen's Bench of the High Court, as he is married to Lord Adair Turner's sister, the previous chairman of the FSA, and he engaged in secret meetings without notifying me. He also wrote out an illegal and defectively worded order with nil jurisdiction, which was described thus by the Court of Appeal in 2012, which dismissed our claim against the bank without any hearing. It's illegal. Master Rose, dishonest case-fixing, and ignored new evidence emerging from the SFO trial against Younger and White by prematurely striking out our claim against Bank of Scotland and acting with bias and prejudice. But of course, we didn't realise at that stage our real enemy wasn't only Bank of Scotland, it was the shadow bank from the Bank of Scotland, which they were entertaining. Next one. Judge Meston, QC, in Bournemouth Court, who has acted with a want of probity and tried to ignore that the originating possession claim was never validly issued, bearing no court seal, which is a violation of Civil Procedure Rule 2.6, was only detected by me in autumn 2014, demonstrating there have never been any proceedings due to no valid issuance. Because basically, if there's no court seal, it can't proceed because it's not being issued. It stands to reason. And there's nothing they can do to try to tell you otherwise. Which means that all the false court sessions which followed this were conducted in a private capacity fall away. Of this I am now 100% sure, and for this reason I have made a decision to boycott Bournemouth Court totally on corruption grounds. They cannot be trusted. They have no compliance whatsoever with the law. And then there's also Lewison LJ, Lord Justice Lewison, in brackets, Paul Mitchell, the barrister, who perjured himself repeatedly before the Court of Appeal in May 2012 in an oral hearing when I was still in hospital, where he'd served no grounds to me beforehand or at all, which is a violation of civil procedure rules. He ought to have had it struck out there and then, but he managed to get it through to the system through just total manipulation. I mean, in-your-face manipulation. He'd even been denied permission, but somehow he popped back up again and got permission through a rogue judge after 3 attempts. I mean, it's unheard of. That's absolute pure fiction. And then judges Lloyd, Jackson and Laws in the Court of Appeal, who appeared to be given a bribe deal to buy them off to rule in the bank's favour, even though we had won on all points of law in October and December 2012. And that Court of Appeal judge is totally false. It appears to have been written by the fair hand of Paul Mitchell, the barrister. They had reserved the judgment for 5 weeks after Christmas in 2012, and it appears on Bailey's and LexisNexis, and it's a completely false judgment. It awarded costs to the bank. Of course, the bank couldn't claim the cost because they don't have a debt, so it goes full circle. And you can see how outrageous this all is. How can you appeal an invalid case in the first place? How can you appeal something that doesn't exist? This is my technical question. Also, there's Lord Mance and 2 other judges in the Supreme Court who illegally and unlawfully refused us permission to appeal in the public interest because we'd never had any defence. We'd never been allowed a defence to defend our home, which is illegal, despite the fact it had been struck out, and this was done without any hearing over 7 years. Judge Maloney, QC, from Cambridge Court, on my sister's case, has also acted illegally, without jurisdiction, and with a complete lack of honour or integrity. Full details can be provided. He tried to cruelly and criminally stitch up my sister in 2014 with a backdoor summary judgment, skipping due process and proper court procedure, denying her any pre-trial review to deal with critical preliminary issues, denying her any trial or fair hearing, and using nasty bullying and subversive, underhanded methods to intimidate her, until I stepped in last year with a public intervener's affidavit notice. He has obviously been bought by Tim Pyle and Paul Mitchell again. And by the way, that's now been succeeded. I've won in the High Court so far, where, as I said earlier on, Justice Knowles has said my sister appears to owe nothing, but as I say, they owe her, so the shoe's on the other foot. They turned her from being a claimant into being a defendant. This is what they do. They turn the tables on you through skullduggery. It is ironic that the rogue activities referred to above resulted in no less than 3 false court orders being made against us without jurisdiction, all of which awarded, quote, costs to the Bank of Scotland plc, which the bank have been unable and unwilling to claim on because they have no debt. So it comes back full circle. So do you see my point? There is no debt. They've got no record on the balance sheet. They can't go and claim the costs when they haven't got any costs because they never instructed Evershits. Okay?
It's fraud piled upon fraud, piled upon fraud, piled upon fraud. I mean, Elizabeth is we got to stay to
this
it.
is why you can see I wanted to tell this story so bad. I mean, I'm so grateful to have the platform and the opportunity to tell the world this is what they've done, but it's taken me all these years. They've hijacked my life. I've literally spent the past 8 years plus unravelling this horrible, horrible, complex, mendacious web of deceit.
Yeah, and you've certainly done a fantastic job in doing it, and we'll certainly drill into this for the listeners in more detail in further episodes
Wait, I
to
haven't
follow.
quite finished. I'll just finish the last bit. The truth has never yet been told in court. There's never been any disclosure or evidence under Part 31, nor even any prima facie evidence in support of the false claims. In all these years, there has never been a fact find, nor any fair hearing. We have never been allowed a defence. The same applies to my sister. Tim Pyle is the rogue in question here, in particular. No wonder he has run away. He has fled. I asked Eversheds, has he been arrested? Is he in prison? And they said, ask the police. All court sessions have evidently been conducted in a private capacity. We have been denied due process of law, and improper procedure and compound irregularities have occurred. I have been personally victimised since 2006 by certain state departments, including the Department of Work and Pensions, Bournemouth Council, and HM Courts, who have deliberately maligned and persecuted me and believe it was all set up by Tim Pyle to try to intimidate me. I've even had death threats on 2 occasions via a phony process server, and then by Tim Pyle's accomplice at Preston Redmond Solicitors in Bournemouth, who Master Eyre had to concede were his own solicitors before he then stepped down from the case, having been caught out red-handed, getting my parents and other victims to withdraw their claims in the High Court. That's how they manipulated and interfered with the course of justice. It's disgusting. I have been caused alarm and distress by the vexatious claim for over 8 years. It has turned our lives upside down and ruined my life and my health and my business. I used to have a strong export business to the Gulf, and it went for a Burton because of all this. We've had the tables turned on us to make us defendants, alleged, when we are and were the rightful claimants. Our High Court claim against Bank of Scotland resulted in our positions being deviously reversed through a process of legal manipulations by Tim Pyle and Paul Mitchell. We had issued a High Court claim in December 2008 against the bank, but never got a hearing, and no issues were ever permitted to be tried. It's probably cost us over £150,000 in wasted court fees. We've been hit with unlawful costs involving serious money laundering and false accounting. Both of the actual claims are 100% false and without substance or prospect of success. There has been unlawful case fixing, and dishonest judges have condoned obvious forgeries and discrepancies of a very serious nature. We've been persecuted for 8 years and chased into the courts under entirely false pretences. Now, Tim Pyle has run away without even notifying the court since late January 2015. Another rogue solicitor is trying to take over, called Richard Pitt from Eversheds, Cardiff, who is also acting in fraud. NB, I believe I have solid grounds to reasonably suspect that Eversheds LLP, Cardiff, were the SPV, i.e. the Special Purpose Vehicle, used to launder money by the shadow bank. They have totally disregarded the law in all these years, in particular the fact there is nil compliance with the Law of Property Act, Miscellaneous Provisions, 1989, nor the Bill of Exchange Act, 1882, nor the Financial Service Markets Act, 2000, nor the 1925 Land Registry Act, which was applied in 2001 before the amended act came into, the inferior amended act came into force, which is when they made all of it electronic. They said that now the deeds are held electronically, which is a total scam because it invites forgeries galore. How can you tell a genuine deed from a fake one? The bank, meanwhile, have continued to stonewall us in a conspiracy of silence. The police will not police and refuse to investigate, telling us, do not send any evidence, and referring us back to yourselves at the SFO. By the way, I've got all this in writing. I've got letters from the police. Even the crime commissioner, Theresa May came to Bournemouth in June 2014, and she said, you are corrupt. And if you listen to Theresa May's speeches about the police online, they're very, very good. But we've not heard much about that since, have we? Recently, I have been doing a lot of public interest work and have been corroborating information from multiple other victims of apparent white-collar fraud and serious organised crime involving apparently rogue traders and bogus solicitors. The same names seem to keep popping up and similar patterns appearing. I'll be writing separately with regards to this soon. Meanwhile, see my email below to the SRA, which is self-explanatory. it would appear that all these frauds and illegal attempted foreclosures are happening through shadow entities, shadow banks, shadow solicitors, shadow courts, hired, quote, judges, unquote, shadow, quote, bailiffs, unquote. The Cardiff office of Evershead's LLP in particular keeps cropping up repeatedly. I've seen hard evidence from fellow victims of more than 20 apparently unlawful repos by Tim Pyle of Evershead's alone. When there is discrepant paperwork or no valid basis for such claims, it appears the Cardiff office of Evershead's may be a shadow setup of the real firm. I urge the SFO to investigate this urgently, along with Matthew and all the others referred to here. Fraser Mackay et al. Ought to have been criminally charged on compelling grounds they've committed compound fraud under 3 sections of the Fraud Act and held on remand in prison long since. Why has nothing yet been done? Please will you respond to my email, since I am overseas and cannot easily access my mail until further notice. I await your soonest response. And his response was to obliterate my letter from my computer. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to know that. The Serious Fraud Act, hiding evidence, I'm going to be tackling them on that, and I'm actually going to be taking it to another source. I will keep my powder dry, but I'll be letting you know soon what I'm doing next. Do you want me to read the report to the SRA compliance director? Or do you want to say that, or you can do this as a separate recording if you like?
No, we'll kick on whilst we've got the energy, Elizabeth, although I would like to just to add for the listeners there that what Elizabeth has described, the implosion of this fiat-based fractional reserve banking system, which is purely based in debt and fraud. You've got politicians, shadow banking systems, shadow solicitors, all in it to facilitate and keep this Ponzi scheme afloat. It's well past its sell-by date, but in the meantime it keeps chugging on, destroying lives each and every day, asset stripping everybody. Every broadcast we've done lately is showing you, from the man on the street to, you know, big corporations are all and everyone in between are just getting annihilated now by this fraud, which is consuming everything of value, anything of real value it's after in order to survive. And Elizabeth has bravely been battling this insidious system, and the people who help protect it for 14-15 years now, along with other people we've mentioned, how Gordon Bowden have shown us how Andrea Davison and people like Peter Hain are tied together. The highest possible parts of the banking industry and the politicians and our court systems are rotten to the core. Just completely rotten to the core.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I would also preface it by saying it all stems back to one organisation. Do you know what that organisation is?
Wouldn't be the Crown, Elizabeth, would it?
Spot on. The Crown Corporation. They have been going 800 years. They were hijacked by Rothschild around 300 years ago at the time of the crash. I think it was around 1812. Rothschild took over Britain's debts, which were housed in the Bank of England under George III. You know the film The Madness of King George? I don't think he was a respected monarch, and basically he said, I will expunge your debts in return for breeding rights on the monarchy. Kate Middleton, by the way, is a double Rothschild, I've heard, should be checked out. Don't be deceived by the royal propaganda. Diana had a lot to say about the royals and what was going on and how they were plotting to kill her. It is despicable. These people are predators of the highest order. They are filching what is basically our land, our country. They're living off us like parasites. They've become so bloated. I mean, let's hope they turn into a giant butterfly and start looking beautiful. You know, which is what all the pageantry and everything should be doing. You know, we should have a community of happy people. We were the strongest economy in the world once. You know, we could be a strong economy again if we got rid of the criminals posing in the banking fraternity. So yeah, the Crown Corporation is at the root of all this. They took over the City of London Corporation. They even turned it into UK PLC. I mean, how deluded is that? If you look on Companies House, it's very interesting. I recommend doing some searches on Companies House. Look up all these solicitors and look up all their different faces of trading, and look up which ones are filing accounts and which ones aren't. And look at the numbers, the registration numbers against the letterheads that they're sending you. Check them out. Do your due diligence. Find out who you're dealing with. Find out who's making the claims against you. and find out if they've even got jurisdiction. I've noticed a heck of a lot of people are making claims who are third parties. They've already had their commission for introducing the business to the bank. You know, they're not the lender. They don't have a debt. They're not out of pocket. What are they doing bringing the frigging claims? This is what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's it in a nutshell. It's
Madness.
insidious. And
Madness.
even the words, I mean, Elizabeth explained earlier about register and registering at birth and things, and it's quite right. To register is to give away ownership. So
That's right.
you
and
think...
you know that your national insurance number is an annuity, and it's tradable on the stock exchange, and that's what they do to get more money off of the equity of you, is turned into a commodity through your number, and it's like the barcode, and they trade it as an annuity. And people that, I think it was Michael Benicio, bless him, he found out that if you can cash in the annuity if you don't register your child at birth, and you can, the money can be paid to you after 7 years or within 7 years or something. I'd have to check the details, but it is actually being turned into a fiscal instrument, and they make billions of pounds off your national insurance number in your lifetime because of their horrible stench pot system with money issued as debt. It's all usury.
Yeah, and again, none of this is new, ladies and gentlemen. You can go back, you can check the threads that Elizabeth had given you, but the last empire that imploded was the Roman Empire, and that, again, was towards the end was based on a fiat-based currency, which is basically based on nothing, and with fractional reserve banking, which is leveraged 10 to 1. You can look into all of this stuff. But towards the end of that empire, when it imploded on itself, these systems have evolved before, and they've come crashing down before, and honest systems have been there to replace them. We seem to be coming to an end of this cycle right now in our living times, where we see this Western banking system crashing in on itself. And this is not the first time, as I say. It has happened before. The Caligula was in charge last time. The law went completely out of the window then too. I mean,
That's true. I just want to say one interesting thing, actually, that I think it all comes down to self-realization, as Michael Benicio has rightly said in his brilliant website, selfrealization.com. It comes down to knowing who you are. Who are you? We are the sovereigns. We are the happening. We are the power. We have, in our true birthright, our birthright is equitable. It's equity. We're born in equity. Nobody can take that from you. It's your divine right. It's your God-given right. Dieu est mon droit. And if you lay before any court the law of God, that's the highest authority in that courtroom, not the sovereign court, not the sovereign argument about the Queen, HM courts. It's not her courts. It's basically the law of God. We lay them under the law of God. That's what I think we need to start doing. And I love there's two sentences that sum it up, 2 lines from the Course in Miracles, which I study and I love. And it says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And I think that statement is so profound. And if you think of that, all of this rubbish is unreal. It has no power. It has no kingdom. It has no strength. It cannot stand. And, it must self-destruct because it's no thing. It's nothing. We have to see that by knowing who we are and not fearing it, not being paralyzed with fear and reacting and responding to it, but actually knowing nothing real can be threatened. We are real, living, sentient human beings. We are real, good men and women. That is what's real. Clean water, that is what's important. Clean air, that is what's important. Land, free energy. That's what humans need to thrive. If you watch that film, Thrive, it's very interesting. I recommend it on the internet. You can watch it. But it says, they've hijacked the energy through Exxon and all the big oil companies. They're fighting wars all over the world because of energy, which they've hijacked. They don't own the elements. They don't own the sun. They don't own the...
No.
But that's what it comes down to. It's like a bunch of twats saying, we own the world. We own X, Y, Z. This means of exchange, which is the foreign exchange system and this thing we call money. It's just nonsense. Money is energy. When we take it back to its denominator, fair exchange, Bill of Exchange Act, bring back the Magna Carta principles, bring back the principles of common sense. That's what I say.
You're quite right. And I mean, people need to understand the point is that the true authority lies within. Everyone's looking for somebody else to sort it out, and it's always been within. The difference between right and wrong, it's an inalienable right, and everybody knows it. It's just inherent within each individual. You have different organisations promoting common law, and they are that group and they are that group. Nobody owns common law. There is no leader in common law. There is no one person or one organisation. Common law is exactly that. It's the law of the people. There's no, it's not one organisation, not one person's. It's everybody's, and these mechanisms have been put there for such times that we are living in. That we are living in now. You think that you may be able to get justice in the court? Yeah, they may give you a result here or there, throw the odd crumb. But in essence, the courts themselves are corrupt to the core. They're corporations. They're facilitating the fraud itself. There's mechanisms within common law that hand the power back to the people. But it's up to the...
if you look at, like Lord Denning's famous quote, fraud unravels everything, and if you look at what a true court is, it's supposed to be an independent, impartial tribunal where there's equality of arms and where both sides are arbitrated and they both present their case. Instead, they've contorted it into a procedural mess with manipulative so-called officers of the court representing the victims and getting bought and sold like commodities in an underground trade of, treating justice as if it were a commodity, justice itself as if it were a commodity. To hell with that.
Yeah, they've absolutely monetised it, Elizabeth. I mean...
They've monetised it, exactly. And I mean, you can't buy and sell justice.
No.
The whole concept of paying ridiculous money to file an application in a non-court is madness. And isn't it interesting they've increased their fees by some 600%, and they've had to centralise it to one county court in Salford, Manchester, because of the corruption in the local county courts. I suggest we all boycott the local county courts and challenge everyone who calls himself a judge and ask him, is he sitting in a private capacity or a public capacity? And if it's a public capacity, lay the Bible in front of him and say, I lay you to the laws of God. And if you, on your oath, swear that you will conduct these proceedings and hearing today under the laws of God, then I will stay. Otherwise, I'm out of here. That's what I think we should do.
To believe that the courts have any authority over you, I mean, it's absurd when you look at the facts, the hard facts, and study the situation. You'll soon realise that these courts...
We're all being bitten and eaten alive. Many people are being eaten alive. They chew you up, they spit you out, they rob you, they empty your bank account, they use nefarious means. I mean, it is disgusting. They all go deaf when you try to talk to them, so-called intelligent people. Yeah. You have solicitors with a law degree who are basically criminals, and, they can't understand the difference between forgery and real. They bend the rules, they condone, they bounce you off, they cut you off on the phone. I mean, it's who's going to sign up for this? Why should we tolerate this treatment from these rogues and criminals and parading as officials in public office? I mean, it's insanity.
It is insanity, and we shouldn't put up with it.
Put up with it, and everybody must see, go back into your power, go back into your solar plexus, centre your power. They're even paying some trolls to scour the internet. I mean, I could name a few names, and they set up these rubbish on even fake Quackloos sites, and quite frankly, this is all part of it. They're using the proceeds of crime, they're using laundered money to do these things, but we have to cut off the lifeline that's feeding them. We have to cut off the money that's funding this criminal activity from the county councils, stealing children, breaking up families, commoditising children, stealing, land registry, stealing properties, HMRC, finding incredible divergent schemes to allow the rich and powerful and elite to keep their money and their assets in so-called one law for us and one law for them in structures, whilst they do all the cutbacks on the public. I mean, it's madness. They've had their chance. They failed miserably. The misgovernance in Britain, we have to opt out. And self-governance is what we need. Self-governance through good men and women who unite, and work in a cooperative way, And beware of these intruders with vested interests and people who won't identify themselves. I mean, I had a guy today from the States or from California, and I said to him, under the penalty of perjury, are you an undercover FBI agent? I think I sussed him within minutes. He suddenly went silent. I had no more email, no more text from him. They're prowling all over the place. They set up sting operations. I mean, geez, it goes on and on and on. And, now that I know their game, I thought, never again will I let them, get away with this.
Yeah.
People are running in exile to leave Britain because their children have been stolen and they're facing the threat of imprisonment when they've committed no crime.
That's it.
This is absolute frigging insanity. Who is stopping them? Who is stopping them? We've allowed it to get this bad. With all the dumbing down of the population through game shows and, all the rubbish that they use and extended drinking hours and God knows what, anything to dumb down the brain of the people of the nation. Look at the methods they're using. It's called, what is it called? Deliberate dumbing down, social engineering, I think they call it. Thatcher brought out these pylons in the 70s to control, calm people down in inner cities, giving out microwave energy. It started back in the 70s under the Thatcher regime. It's nothing new, just they're getting more and more subversive. And they must be well panicking now because, they're a minority and we are the majority. And, they are public servants. They're here to serve us. They're not here to dictate to us. They have so departed from base. They've so departed from their true remit.
They left any obligation to the honest common man and woman long behind. Any of the people that they so-called represent, it's a sick joke.
Absolutely. Well, we need to get back to grassroots.
Yeah.
We need to get back to the rotten foundations and pull up the poisonous tree by its poisonous roots.
We were speaking to Helga Greenock from Ukraine. She's in Donetsk there at the moment, and we played the intercepted transmission between our so-called representatives here, Catherine Ashton, Jeffrey Pyatt, who's the US ambassador over there, and other players. I mean, you can clearly see that before the Ukrainian government was even chosen, they were getting certain legal instruments in there and mechanisms of funding to enslave the population. So even at an international level, you can see this Western banking cartel using so-called representatives of the people in order to do their bidding. It is so.
I mean, when you look at their game plan, it's to preserve themselves.
That's all it is.
This is the effrontery of it. It's in your face, brazen. Self-service.
Absolutely.
And we are allowing it, so we have to stop consenting. We have to boycott every state department that's not serving and not filled. If you think about county councils, an average large house would be charged between £1,000 and £2,000 a year in council tax to empty the bins and provide a fire service and whatever else it is that they do. Yeah. I mean, think about that. You think of the millions and millions they're getting for one borough, and think about if that was given to you to run as a business, how much more efficiently could you run that business? And then you look at all the councillors on their payrolls, and then you find out that there's wheels within wheels, and that they've all got their own private trading companies, and they're all doing private business with the private-owned county councils. It's sickening. And then they're taking the children and trafficking them, to other countries for more money, and then putting care orders on children through fake court orders, which is one of the reasons why they did what they did to me in 2011. That they basically did not want that coming out, that these weren't court orders, because there was no record at the family court whatsoever of the Vicky Hay case. I got it in writing from the principal registry. It said on the fake orders, please contact the principal registry. When you contact them, they had no record of such a case number, and they put that in writing, which means it was the county council issuing fake court orders in order to get the money released from the public purse, averaging £2,500 per week per child. You multiply that with the number of children put in care, it comes to something like £3 billion a year. Billion, not million, billion. How many jobs will that feed on the payroll?
Yeah.
How outrageous!
And that's just one small example, Elizabeth, unfortunately, isn't it?
It is. Shall I quickly read this letter to the SRA? Then I ought to go, but I'd happily, speak another time. But
Indeed.
Let's get this one out.
Okay.
I sent it to Mr. Wilmot, who's supposed to be in charge of compliance. I've said, Dear Mr. Wilmot, very urgent, red alert to multiple rogue solicitors using false trading entities, interim report. I've been doing a considerable amount of investigative work on a pro bono consultancy basis in the public interest in relation to apparently fraudulent repossession claims in the UK, most of which are violently conducted using illegal methods and undue force by apparently hired gangs of thugs posing as bailiffs and enforcement officers without lawful jurisdiction. Many of these are being brought by rogue solicitors who are operating via offshore setups or hiding behind trading names or operating fraudulent companies with a phoenix facade to conceal their unlawful activities. It is quite astonishing, as it begs the question, why isn't the Solicitors Regulatory Authority intervening in these matters, let alone managing to even detect these criminal subversive activities, or so it appears? I will be sending you a further report shortly with more details of my specific findings and how certain solicitor trading entities are showing up as potentially fraudulent and duplicitous. In the public interest, I believe it is wholly necessary to alert you to the fact that several patterns appear to be occurring which indicate there is apparently serious organised crime being committed by many crooked people who are registered as solicitors and so parading as officers of the court. A clear abuse of position under Section 4 of the Fraud Act 2006. It's further apparent that they're also fraudulently misrepresenting duff claims in the HM courts, which is a violation of Section 2 of the Fraud Act, and withholding vital information in respect of those false claims, which is a violation of Section 3 of the Fraud Act 2006, fraud by withholding information. These are some of the commonly occurring patterns. 1. Solicitor firms setting up a separate trading entity alongside their UK LLP or limited company. The separate one, which falls outside of the SRA's regulation and is based offshore and is therefore not obliged to hold accounts. These appear to be run like a shadow trading entity without being a fully registered company, i.e. merely a trading name. In summary, conducting ultra-various transactions that are all uninsured and uninsurable, unregulated and unaccounted for. 2. Solicitor firms who are running a shadow setup via one specific branch office of theirs, e.g. Walker Morris LLP or Eversheds LLP, etc. They're often using selected registered solicitors who hold more than one profile. One such example is Timothy Pryall of Eversheds, who held a profile in both Eversheds' Cardiff office and a profile in Eversheds' Manchester office at the same time. It is possible that neither were bona fide. By the way, Eversheds Manchester is where the public interest unit, so-called, for the whole of UK runs from, and it's also where Fraser Mackay ran the shadow bank out of in Manchester. Eversheds' office in particular is notorious for bringing fraudulent claims with nothing to support them. Their name keeps coming again and again. They're using legal assistance to bring some of the claims who do not sign the statement of truth on the claim form at the courts in what frequently appear to be falsified and forged paperwork. I have several examples which can be sent to you with the permission of the victims being targeted. Let me know. They peddle bogus possession claims, for instance, which do not exist as valid loans or mortgages or any lender's on any lender's balance sheet, with not even a loan or compliant valid mortgage loan contract. I have proof of this in the case of Eversheds and believe that proof can be accessed in the case of Walker Morris LLP trading as just Walker Morris. They frequently work with indeterminate middlemen and brokers like Wave Lending Limited or Mortgage Express, who are not the original lending source and who have no jurisdiction, and are all done like a smoke and mirrors exercise. Their false claims are brought through other duplicitous set-up companies parading as legal services like Walker Morris LLP, whose company house record shows no accounts being filed, yet they have a separate registered trading entity offshore called Walker Morris Legal Services, EEIG, with no reporting duties, operating from the same UK address, but with no accounts filed because they've got something else offshore. I mean, it's in your face. The latter entity is the active one, which is the offshore one, and the kosher entity is often shown as dormant on the company house records. This is highly irregular, ambiguous, and apparently set up to deceive and create smokescreens. 3. There is a further example where solicitor firms are colluding with intermediate third parties such as the introducer to the lender, alleged, who, despite having no jurisdiction, bring the false claims as if they were the acting solicitors, but liaising in collusion with certain solicitors. Examples of third parties bringing fraudulent claims are Redstone Mortgages, Mortgage Express, Optima Legal. Mortgage Express, by the way, has many faces, using a carousel of companies like a boiler house scheme. Optima Legal, who are basically debt collectors with only one accreditation for a solicitor amongst a large number of employees who enjoy giving the public the impression of being solicitors. To name but a few, these parties in most cases were merely brokers interfacing with the purported lender. But because the loans are fraudulent, the source of the said loans has no enforceable contract or records, and so the intermediate third party tries their luck at using deception to procure or extract money from their victim. They do this by parading as being the claimants. 4. Solicitors from major law firms, e.g. Timothy Pyle from Eversheds LLP, who are acting as the SPVs, special purpose vehicles, to launder money for a major bank, where no debt exists on the main ledger, and so they do these scams through a shadow bank setup, e.g. Bank of Scotland within Parallel Solutions as a trading name from April 2000, which laundered huge sums of money misappropriated from clients without any form of regulation or shall we call it capture regulation, all done off balance sheet, no accounts held or traceable, and uninsured and uninsurable, so no professional indemnity insurance cover and no SRA regulation. I have hard evidence of this. I've already written yesterday to your head of the SRA Disciplinary Tribunal, Gordon Ramsay, in regards to Tim Pyle. He urgently needs to be intercepted and his cohorts who still work at Eversheds, e.g. Richard Pitt. Please check out some of the info below. 5. There are also false brokers and intermediary third parties who introduce business bringing bogus claims while falsely purporting to be solicitors but dealing direct, yet without lawful jurisdiction. Mortgage Express, for example's trading name appears to be a can of worms operating many different facades in what appears to be a huge carousel fraud using defunct corporations taking on the role of a solicitor or acting in collusion with dishonest solicitors in an evident conspiracy to steal land, property, etc. More details will follow. It calls for a public inquiry, in fact. This is an interim report to alert the SRA to these absolutely shocking and appalling goings-on, which is hijacking innocent people's lives in this serious crime. I trust the SRA will take swift remedial action. I can put you in touch with multiple victims of these white-collar frauds, which you get agree appear to be endemic. I've got about probably 40 I'm looking at the moment. The leaked reports from New Scotland Yard, Operation Tiberius, Operation Orthona, and Operation Zloty, released in January 2014 through The Independent by the journalist Tom Harper, all confirm it is official that criminal gangs have infiltrated the entire criminal justice system, but it needs to go further and needs urgent updating, as these gangs have infiltrated the entire civil justice system as well. Because, you know, they bring this through the civil courts, who work under the law of contract, and they have the cheek to go in there with no contract. The elephant in the room. However, they misleadingly use the past tense. They say that it was infiltrated, which it should read is infiltrated, and add that the civil justice system is also infiltrated. Note, all the bogus possession claims are being peddled through the civil courts, often hiring out courtrooms in a private capacity and hiring judges who are not sitting on their judicial oath of office, so in no position to discharge their judicial obligations lawfully. Rogue operators are even bringing false bankruptcies as a backdoor means of debt collection, appointing fake trustees when the no debt even exists without any valid paperwork or petition, nor even any creditors in many instances. Thus they are unlawfully seizing control of victims' estates, and all along there isn't even a record of the alleged bankruptcy at the courts or the bankruptcy register. How many cases have I heard that there isn't even a record of the bankruptcy, the so-called bankruptcy, and they abuse this. I mean, bankruptcy is meant to protect you from creditors, not feed you to the lions. It's outrageous. Many rogue law firms are involved. Companies like Beechcroft, Lock Law, DLA Piper, Eversheds, Salons, Solicitors, Walker Morris, Pinsent Masons, Optima Legal Services, trading questionably as Optima Legal. By the way, I've got a very good template letter that I sent to 3 lots of solicitors on Shida Araki's case, who were supposedly acting for the bogus trustee who had been appointed by the struck-off bogus solicitor, who is still hiding in America, hasn't been indicted by the SRA, but has probably lined their coffers to the tune of hundreds of millions of pounds. That rogue, Sharok Miraz Kandari, orchestrated the theft of a something between 20 and 100 million pounds off targeting wealthy Iranians and using bogus bankruptcies, providing loads of fodder and chattel for the white-collar fraudsters who are all salivating at the prospect of lots of work to do. Ha, ha, ha. And the bottom line is that he got struck off after a massive fight, having forged his references from a sham university in Hawaii, which was shut down and fined £1 million by the SEC. And they still didn't indict this criminal, who still walks free today in America, and he came to England and creamed off all these properties. And City of London Police and the Metropolitan Police are heavily involved in targeting the Dr. Shida Araki. For 10 years I've watched that woman and her family suffer. It is disgusting, and she's even got lots of videos of them using most violent forced entry from undercover agents of Mir Kandari, posing as police officers, no warrant, no nothing, and doing deals with the Metropolitan Police. I mean, Ali Dizay, who was, I think wasn't it one of the chief constables of the Metropolitan Police was jailed, and it was all to do with Ali Dizay. Was it Ali Dizay that was jailed? I'll have to look up the details, but I know that they uncovered a massive amount of corruption, and it's still going on. It still goes on today. Who was that guy? Keith Faz. He's supposed to control Britain's borders. He's up to his neck in it. Snouts in the trough. He even tried to intervene in the High Court to stop Mir Kandari being struck off. Can you believe it? This is all fact. It never gets reported in the press, of course. Anyway, I'll finish off the last paragraph. In the above ways, fake trading entities are being set up as shadow entities acting in collusion with shadow banks and shadow bailiffs, and stealing assets, properties, homes on a huge scale. I and my colleagues have first-hand evidence on multiple cases, with evidence we've been corroborating in recent months and years. Please let me know if I can assist you further. I've made reference to the independent report called The Corruption of Britain, UK's Key Institutions Infiltrated by Criminal Gangs. I've included, look up Timothy Pyle, or those shows, look him up on the internet. I wonder where he's gone now. I wonder where he's hiding. Look up Fraser Mackay. Virtually nothing on him. Where is he hiding? Where did all the money go? Where did the money go? You know, hundreds of billions of pounds being wiped off bank balance sheet. Where has that money gone? That's what we need to ask.
Yeah, you're probably into fictitious mining companies and the rest of the things that have been uncovered.
Set up fly-by-night company. That's right.
Yeah.
Fake entities.
Yeah, I mean,
all aided and abetted by HMRC, please note.
Our favourite money laundering firm.
Mm.
Along with
Richard Goldman, the ex-director of the SFO, who condoned all this serious fraud I've just read to you in my letter, he was apparently reviled. He used to work at HMRC, and they were all dancing in the aisles when he left, and that's because one of them came to see me for lunch and told me this.
Yeah.
And his predecessor, Robert Wardle, you know, he was another rogue. The BAE arms deal with Saudi, you know, there was all kinds of cover-up going on there, and they decided it was bad for the economy to expose any fraud, so they went along with it politically. They used political law to get out of it, and in the same way that Wardle blocked all investigation into Bank of Scotland, illegal protectionism, and then he resigned just before the trial against Gangrel White, the scapegoated accountants, began in July 07, and he went in 2008 to go and work for basically work for the Bank of Scotland through their main solicitors, DLA Piper, as an anti-fraud consultant. Can you believe that? And DLA Piper got the job with Baker Tilly in the bogus insolvency with Dodd White, and nicked all the money because they were the gatekeepers to control all the money, you see. They hid all the forensic audit trails, so none of us could access a single bank statement that would have proved that the securities, the false securities they used, which was the letters of undertaking, were worthless script. And, you know, that they violated the letters of undertaking, saying the money wouldn't be moved. We could have proved with the bank statements who moved it, when it was moved, and how it was moved. But because they controlled the bank accounts and the production of the statements, it's the ultimate abuse of power. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
we're talking, you know, huge millions.
I'd go into the trillions, I would, Elizabeth, really, I mean, across the board.
One case is that, you know, they stole like £2 million off me and my family.
Yeah.
My family alone. You know,
Yeah.
my aunt had like £7 £700,000 stolen. You know, we've had over £1 million stolen. You know, not all of it liquid, but some of it in the form of these 3 false charges. We're trying to get these 3 false charges removed from our house, and it's like, Jesus, what does it take to get false charges removed? You know, they all go silent, they all go AWOL. You know, why don't we do to them what they do to us? You know, they make demands, they ask for things, go silent, boycott them, go silent, don't answer them, do what they do to us, let them have a taste of their own medicine. You know, no court can compel any man or woman to attend court. You know, civil courts have got no power over us. It's all consensual.
Yeah. No, you're quite right. We've got to leave the system behind. It's not for us. It never was. It's
arcane. It's arcane, and it's corrupted, and it's imploding. It's self-destructing, and we want out, and we want it soon. And we have to basically seize the day. Part B in. You
know, people say that capitalism is free. There's no capitalism. Forget about it. They're bailing the banks out. Any form of idea of true capitalism has gone. You know, too big to fail.
I know.
I mean,
and none of them are too big to fail because they're basically a cesspit. And it's like that whistleblower Karen Hughes has said. You know, they're all one, actually. You know, all the banks come under different trading names, but they all come into one big pool of money, and it's all fiat money. And in the Vavasor fraud, interestingly, they nicked the seed capital. So the seed capital, you see, all of it's made up of what's called mid-term notes, MTNs.
Yeah.
And they have new mid-term notes, which is the fiat money issued, and then they have seasoned MTNs, which are underpinned by a commodity like a house, or, you know, the real money is in the value of the gold or the commodity.
Indeed.
But the MTNs which they're printing, fiat money, is basically, you know, issued out of thin air, and to charge interest on that. And there's loads, if you Google mortgage fraud on the internet, it brings up, like, I don't know, hundreds of links of TV programs of banks confirming that they found there's no record of any of the transactions for mortgages, that they never existed, and they've got nothing on the balance sheet, and they only brought in the FSMA Markets Act in 2000. Before that, they just had a mortgage code, which was very generic and very general and very ambiguous. And by the way, one of the other massive scams they're using is remortgages. You ask a bank to prove a remortgage. You know, Paula Campbell's case, remortgage, hundreds of thousands of pounds. But where did the money go? Did she get the money? If somebody says to you, I gave you a remortgage, and there's a solicitor's letter sent to you to try and, you know, claim credibility via a solicitor's letter, which is what they did in Paula Campbell's case. So it's like, show me where the money went. Where did the money go? What is this remortgage? It's like putting you in bondage and saying, you know, you have to have this debt saddling you for the rest of your life, and you have to keep on feeding and paying interest on it, and therefore renegotiate it. So, but how do you ever pay it off? Because it never existed.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, even when the system did pop, we bailed them out, but even that wasn't enough. They're doing this quantitative easing now, which is printed. You've got to laugh. I mean,
quantitative easing is the work of Satan.
It's incredible. They printed more money the last 2 years than the previous 200 years of commerce alone.
Oh, I know.
This is mind-boggling.
They control the media as well. I think it was somebody was telling me that Lord Rothschild, you know, seized control of the media by buying up all the publishing houses back in I think it was the 1900s or 1930s.
Yes, that's all sewn up.
Yeah, he bought up the publishing house so he could control the media. So, you know, that's why we don't have a free press now either.
Yeah.
It was we're starting to get one, but it's like giving birth. It's like labour pains. You know, it's very hard.
Everything that's going on geopolitically around the world today, every war, every skirmish, every coup, every colour revolution, it's all in order to keep this banking system, debt slave system afloat.
Absolutely, and Rothschild is the rogue, the kingpin pulling strings. And my God, you know, geez, we must be in for a wonderful time, you know, in terms of rebalancing all this. You know, when you look, everything is balanced by the universe. Everything has an opposite and an equal, you know, Newton's law. And so let's look forward to the times to come. You know, I think we can all be quite bullish and positive and get your power back, keep working on spiritual levels, work with the law of God. Put that in front of these so-called judges. Don't be bullied, don't be intimidated. Look at the devil in the detail. Read every word on every claim that comes through and spread the information. If anybody wants to know how some pointers on dealing with a possession claim from the court, provided you identify who you are, and I know you're not an undercover sting operator, I can give you some tips. Just email me and I'll send them to you. I've also brought out some didactic videos, but again, because of hackers on the internet and because of trolls who have actually been taking videos and recording over them, and we know some of the names of them that are doing this, and they too are in a gang, and they're probably paid by secret services, but they're trying to sabotage any information getting out, just in the same way that I sent my thing through to the SFO, it transmitted, and then it got wiped off my computer. Well, I'm going to tackle that next, and I just, wish everybody, all power to their elbow and fight the good fight, and let's form this cooperative. I think we need to, formalise our cooperative union to fight these people, basically. But we fight them by creating our own system and, starving out theirs. In other words, they become redundant.
Yeah, theirs is done. It's over, it's long over, but it's still causing people pain on a day-to-day basis. And
yeah, because they're believing in them somehow. They still believe they're real or that they've got power. And often when these rogue companies are finding out that people are rumbling that they're interlopers, they pull out the stops and send in thugs, hired thugs to terrorise people and drilling through the locks to evict them. Not because they're genuine at all. That's why I'm saying to people, go to the High Court Enforcement Office.
When they
did everything.
Yes, when they do get their talons in you, as was depicted in Vic Skip's case, they'll collude with the magistrate to find out exactly how many assets you got, monetary-wise, and to the penny, that's your fine. In Vic's case, it was 400 grand for not having a licence. 400,000.
Well, that's just racketeering. You mean that's criminal? That's illegal. And again, it's a breach of Data Protection Act and everything. So, I know what goes on. And the other thing is, why does anybody ever have to even go to a magistrate's court on a civil matter? Because, they're not a court of record. No. Nothing is recorded there. Therefore, you're denied due process. Those are solid grounds to refuse to attend a so-called summons. All it is an invitation. You don't have to concede. You don't have to accept. And the key thing I would advise to give to everyone is do not create joinder with these rogues, because the minute you create joinder, you're giving them power, you're giving them credence.
Once they get their hooks in you, they'll take you for as much as they can, not only money-wise, but physically, energy. This system will suck you dry if you play with it. If you.
I know.
But
they do that with alacrity. That's right. They'll hoover up everything out your bank account, in court fees and the like. They'll hoover up everything from fake trustees. They divide it. There's an American judge that came forward and he blew the whistle on the system and said that, dishonest judges are sharing the spoils of the properties they rubber stamp through the courts with a whole series of people like the solicitors, the SPVs, etc. And if anybody wants that, again, it's on my Judge Watch site. Around late last year, I uploaded that in December, I think it was. The information's all out there, and we were very fortunate that we've got the internet, the information age, we can access all of it. Anyway, I'll have to shoot now, but it's a pleasure talking, and thanks ever so much for giving me this opportunity to share this info, and I'd be very interested in any, interesting constructive feedback that might result.
Oh, absolutely, and thank you, Elizabeth, on behalf of everyone, Common Law Court of Wales, and thank you, and thank you again.
Thanks so much, yeah. God bless you.
I will just squeeze one more thing in on the point of trolls and whatnot. To anyone who's thinking of contacting the Common Law Court of Wales, be very careful in the details that you were given because of the subject matter that we deal with. We're definitely being monitored, and that, so just be wise of that. You don't need all the advice is out there in other formats in order for you to create grand juries and common law courts. You don't have to blow your cover by contacting us, and like I said, nobody's in charge. We're all one people, and we're all in the same boat together. So just be wary of that. And again,
that's right. And the common law, like you say, we are the equity. We're born in equity, and at the end of the day, courts aren't fit for purpose anymore. And you know, they have to go because they're not operating under common law, and it's all false agendas. Even oil, they've been auctioning it off at high seas for years so that they don't pay taxes. So, you know, it's a fact that the criminal elite are getting richer and misappropriating assets and supporting the false monarch on the throne, etc. And, you know, the average Joe is being, he's under siege. He and she is under siege.
Indeed.
You know, we can't rely on the state for anything. We can't suck on the teat of the state anymore. That social engineering episode is ending. It has to end. We have to get back into our power, follow your bliss, do what you love, create, you know, go and create the work and businesses that you love, but do it, you know, set it up offshore. Do what they do.
Yeah.
You know, you know, we have a system of protecting, you know, the innocent people, and you know, we just have to kind of let it continue to evolve. And the main thing is know your enemy. You know, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So in other words, we have to understand the methods they're using, and many of them are now defecting anyway. Lots of police officers, you know, it's unconscionable what they've been asked to do, and they don't want to do it anymore, and they're leaving in their droves. Same with barristers, same with solicitors. They don't want to be tainting and selling their consciences out like this anymore. You know, man is, I believe, intrinsically good, and you know, where you've got evil working its machinations, it's all fiction, it's all fake, and it has to go.
If you could just name the sites that people can find you one more time.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, I set up the Facebook group called Judge Watch.
Yeah.
And you can join that. And then also I set up Stop the Cash for Kids Racketeering by County Councils in the UK. It's quite a long title, that one, but Stop the Cash for Kids Racketeering by County Councils in the UK. That's because of my experience in 2011 and knowing how the county councils are stealing children to basically undermine the structure of society by breaking up families and commoditising children for profit. And it is a fact, and it is a provable fact, that the councils it's all coming out now, that they're keeping two lots of accounts, one for the public and one subversive one, which is doing all the money laundering and trafficking of children. And all the councillors are in on it, and we must boycott them. You know, we just don't give them our business anymore. We say to them, sorry, I have no business with you, go away. And we claim back our freehold on our land by renouncing the registration process. It's meant to be a mere land registry, but it's far more than that, as many are finding out to our cost. And similarly, question the whole thing about taxes. You know, who says that you have to pay council tax when they're paying the police, and the police won't police? You know, what services are we paying for? You know, better off hiring it privately. Similarly, you know, HMRC, you know, I question how many of the methods they're using. Why are the rich elite power brokers getting away with paying no tax, and then they go after the little man? To hell with that. You know, lawful rebellion, you know, it has to stop. Stop feeding them.
Quite right.
And then the prison services are sort of full of people who committed petty crimes, and the really serious criminals like the banksters who've stolen hundreds of billions in organised crime, nowhere near the prisons. You know, they're bloody running the system. To hell with it. Who's funding the prisons? You know, I can tell you that in Holloway they told me that it's all they could do just to control the security of the prison. They couldn't even do any rehabilitation or anything to help. No pastoral care. They couldn't do anything to help people on a meaningful level.
It's all about the money again, Elizabeth. I mean, you've got G4S who run jails all over the world, including Palestine and Gaza. By the way that
CLCOW.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be making goods for multinational corporations next, like in America, to compete with the East.
Yeah. Why are we such mugs to carry on paying them?
All goes to the private side. It's incredible. I think they call it sustainable development.
Common purpose, more like.
Yeah. There we are. Elizabeth, we'll let her get off. Thank you very much again on behalf of everyone listening, and on behalf of the Common Law Court of Wales. And of course, we'll catch up very soon, and we'll have an update for everyone.
Fantastic.
Right.
And I really recommend you take a look at Michael Obenich's site, selfrealization.com, and look up Get Out of Debt Free, Jonathan Witteret, absolutely brilliant site.
Indeed.
Doing great work, excellent templates. I even actually like the FMOTL, Free Man of the Land site, good template letters. You know, take your power back, study the template letters, work with the principles. All of this is built on principles which they've all departed from. The Treasury website has 11 principles of banking. Every single one of them is being violated and departed from, and so on. So just go back to the principles and work with the principles, and you can say to them, I renounce you on the basis you are corrupt, and I refuse to deal with you. You're bad for my health. That's what I tell Bournemouth Council, that's what I tell Bournemouth Court, and anyone else who tries to encroach and violate and con me. I've even, late last year, had a rubbish order from Bournemouth Court issued by the council saying, instead of saying before Judge so-and-so, it said before a proper officer, and they were trying it on to get something like £2,900, complete rubbish, figures plucked out the air, thinking I was going to fall for this. I sent it back to them. I said, have it back, you know, you guys are rogues. That's the final straw that broke the camel's back. You know, I renounce you, I will not deal with you, go away. You're bad for my health. Health and safety reasons, I won't deal with you. Go away, let me live my life in peace, I said. I think we all need to do that. Tell them, let me live my life in peace. Peace, the police are saying they're there to prevent a breach of the peace. Let's claim our peace. Peace on earth.
There we are. On that note, we'll leave you get off, and thank you again, Elizabeth.